research-based approach. I'm really interested on what he has to share about what he's learned with the correlation between personality and tech coaching. So Caleb, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. We're really excited to have you today, and the floor is yours.
All right, hi. Thank you for having me, Tiara. I just want to say thank you to Dyknow as a whole for hosting this, putting this together. Who would have thought that you guys had the crazy good forethought to put this as a digital conference and make it to be something where everyone has access to it? If this had been a conference where we had to show up somewhere, it wouldn't have happened. So I want to say thank you to you guys for hosting it in this format and allowing so many people to be a part of it, and be able to get all of these resources that we all share with each other. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen here. And let's see. All right, looks like that's working. Again, my name is Caleb Magness. I am the head instructional technologist for Pecos-Barstow-Toyah ISD. That is a school district out in West Texas. We're about middle of the way between Midland and El Paso, so it's pretty far out. This is a crazy time for all of us, so I thank you all for coming in and joining this so you can listen to me talk to you. My presentation is Personality and Technology Coaching Success, a research-based approach. And so what this is really my story from as I went through grad school, through into the corporate world, and then now into the educational space, how I've developed the way that I interact with my teachers, using personality to make sure I'm more successful. I have kind of a unique route that I got into education. I didn't go directly from college into teaching and then into instructional technology like you see a lot of instructional technologists. And by the way, I sat in on the last presentation, and I love the idea of having different branding and different ways to call instructional technology. They call it I don't remember what the acronym they used, but it was a good one. It took the IT out of it, so teachers weren't confused about what instructional technologists were. But anyway, there's lots of names for what we do, and we want to coach better, right? So my route to this was not through teaching. I have a master's degree in industrial organizational psychology. All that is a lot of words for psychology of the workforce. My main focus has always been on personality and training and development. So making sure that how do we use personality to help influence how we train and develop employees inside of organizations. I went from graduate school into the corporate world. I actually worked for a tax consulting company in Houston. I was the talent development coordinator for that company. So I ran our training program for new hires. So they came in on day one, and I ran our training program, getting them internally certified to deal with clients inside of all the requirements that they had to do. So I helped develop training programs, helped modify what we had existing, making sure that we had instructors and things like that available to work with them. And so it really worked pretty well in that instance to start using personality to develop how I coached employees in that sense. But I started to get kind of burnout inside of the corporate world. I wanted to make a little bit more of a difference in what I was doing. Both of my parents are teaching, so I grew up in the educational world, and I know how important teachers are to the world as a whole. I mean, making sure our students are well educated and go on to do great things. And the educational sphere has changed a lot even since I was in school. Technology is becoming more and more of an integral piece to how a teacher teaches lessons. And so I wanted to be able to use my expertise to help with the impact of using technology in the classroom. And so just kind of walking through how this all came about, some prior research on this. 2005, there was a study that they did that 90% of the organizations they surveyed inside of this engaged in some kind of coaching. You all engage in coaching, or you wouldn't be here at the 2020 Technology Coaching Conference. So we all engage in coaching, and this has been going on for a while. A 2017 report discovered that organizations with a strong coaching culture actually had more highly engaged employees. So if we coach better, our employees are engaged. We especially want that for teachers, right? We want to be engaged in the classroom. A 2016 study that was using neuroscience actually suggested that coaching was a better growth driver than some of the others. So if we want employees to be better, coaching is a good way to do that. Kind of transitioning that into the personality sphere, there was a 2007 study that showed personality is has strong validity as a predictor of job performance. All this means is that if I'm trying to figure out why an employee does good or doesn't do good in a job of some sort, personality is a good predictor of why. The 5-factor personality model, which is what I used in my research, and it's what I carry over with my teachers, and I'll talk about here in just a minute. This model can explain a large portion of the variance in job performance. So if we look at all the different reasons why somebody would be good or bad at the job performance, personality can be a pretty large piece of why they're good or bad at a specific job. So this is just the prior research. This is what got me intrigued in it in grad school and started helping develop what I did. The 5-factor model is what I use. It's also known as the Big Five. It examines 5 core personality factors. You have openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. So these 5, openness is the idea, are you open to experiences? Do you like novel experiences, new things? Are you open to feedback, things like that? Conscientiousness, are you a hard worker? Are you task-oriented, goal-oriented? Are you someone who, focuses on something till it's done? Extroversion, this is probably the one most people get immediately because extroversion and introversion are very big things of popular culture. But extroversion, are you social? Are you outgoing? Do you get a lot of energy from being in front of other people? Agreeableness, do you like harmony? Do you want to make sure that your interactions are positive and you form relationships and they're all positive experiences? And then neuroticism. Neuroticism a lot of the times is sometimes reverse coded as emotional stability. Neuroticism is, are you emotionally stable? Where is that level? Are you easily, fearful, or do things take you out of a calm state into an emotional state very easily? Things like that. There's all sorts of personality models. They all have benefits and they all can sometimes have detractors. I use the 5-factor because of its ease in research. A lot of people, when they hear personalities, they think of like the colors or the Myers-Briggs with the INJST and things like that. And I don't have anything against those. The only reason I don't really use them for my type of stuff is because the personality models that put you into categories, if you're somebody who's on the bubble between 2 categories, one question may flip you from one category to another. So like with the Myers-Briggs, one question may change your personality type and may change the information that was given to you because of that. Whereas the 5-factor model, it's just a score out of 100. And so your levels, they may fluctuate a little bit, but it doesn't change you into different categories based on your responses. It just changes your level that you are inside of the thing. It has this nifty acronym, OCEAN. That's how I remember it. You can also rearrange them to get canoe. Some people do it by canoe. But this is the model I use. And if you're going to do this with your teachers, you can use whatever model you want. I suggest this one just because it's use in research. All right, so my research, where did this start? So it started with the corporate world. In 2016 and 2017, I surveyed hundreds of employees at a Fortune 100 company. I sent emails to them asking them to fill out a questionnaire for me. In the questionnaire, they rated their supervisor's personality using a modified Big Five inventory. I say modified because the actual Big Five inventory, depending on where you get it, it's actually a lot of people use it and they all have their own versions, but depending on where you get it, most of the time it's 50 to 100 questions, and so that can be a little bit long for survey-based research, and people don't like filling that. So it's modified. I've shortened it. you could actually shorten it down to about 15 questions and still be statistically valid. So anyway, it's modified. They also rated how well they thought their supervisor coached certain soft skills to them. So my research originally started on personality and soft skills coaching with a supervisor and supervisee relationship. My results were that if you had higher scores in conscientiousness and agreeableness, it strongly predicted higher coaching ability scores. So if your employees rated you as being more conscientious or agreeable, they were more likely to rate you as also having more ability to coach soft skills to them. It also showed that openness was a statistically significant predictor of coaching ability, but at just a slightly weaker level. But those were the three. If you remember, there are 5 factors. Of the 5, conscientiousness, agreeableness, and openness were the best predictors of coaching success and coaching soft skills. So just kind of addressing what soft skills are. Soft skills are different than hard skills, like interpersonal communication, things like that. That's a soft skill. And so this is what my research showed. Just a drink of water real quick. So my conclusions in the corporate research that I did. Well, in order to be more successful as a soft skills coach, and really in any coach in general, you got to focus on 3 things as a supervisor. So conscientiousness, if you are perceived as steadfast and reliable, your advice is taken more seriously. Basically, if you are someone where your employees view you as reliable, you get things done, you know what you're talking about, your advice is more seriously taken by them, right? Agreeableness. If you are friendly and cooperative and compassionate, people take your critiques better. This happens a lot when you have to give negative feedback in coaching, which happens. If you've built those relationships and you show through that you're high on agreeableness, that you like to build those relationships, your critiques are better well taken. And then openness. If you're willing to change how you see things and you're open to change, you have better dialogues with your subordinates. Just that openness. If you go in with the mindset that you're going to coach a certain way and you don't want to listen to any feedback that they have, you're going to be seen as kind of off-putting, right? That interaction, that dialogue's not going to be there. All of this research dealt with a supervisor and employee relationship, but that's not the relationship that we really have as instructional technologists and coaches, right? It's more peer-to-peer interaction. So this information is still viable, but I knew I had to tweak it when I got into Pecos, right? So the conscientious piece to it, I can still, as long as I know what I'm talking about to my teachers, right? I come across as steadfast and reliable, that still works. I build relationships with teachers, compassionate, cooperative. They take critiques better. Sometimes we have to give negative feedback to teachers on how they're using technology in the classroom, things like that. And then, if I'm open to their experiences and understanding where they're coming from, those dialogues are better. But this only kind of put half the picture together for me, right? This showed me how I can be a better coach, but it didn't necessarily show me how I can be more effective in reaching my teachers and how my teachers can be more effective in using their technology. So in order to do that, I had to tailor my research for the school district. So at this point, I measured the personality trait levels at my campuses. So I sent out a survey to them, and it was a blind survey, so I didn't ask for any information from the teachers other than what grade level they taught, elementary, middle school, or high school. I was a little worried at first about asking personality questions from my teachers because I didn't know if they would want to give me that information. So that's why I kept it at just kind of the campus level where I just knew what grade level they taught, not the teachers. Come to find out, when I started implementing this coaching method and style, a lot of teachers wanted to know what their personality traits were. So we've had lots of people lots of teachers ask me, hey, can I get my own personality profile, my inventory done so that we can tailor it to you coaching me? And I definitely, I'm always for that. And that's our next step as we move forward. But for the presentations purposes, it's my general thoughts of the campus as a whole. I took the average scores for each campus, and then once I had those score averages, I started taking them and tailoring them to my coaching style. Before I move forward, I want you guys to be able to take your own personality inventory. This is the inventory that I gave to my teachers. If you go to that bit.ly link, you can type it in, or if you can scan the QR code, it'll take you to a Google Sheet. If you it'll ask you to make a copy of that Google Sheet. And the first thing you'll do is the Google Sheet is 2 pages. On the first page, you have the actual questionnaire with the questions. You rate the statements 1 through 5, and you just fill out that questionnaire. On the second page, I've set it up to where it auto scores your personality trait levels, and then it goes ahead and scales it into a 100-point scale for you, because, like I said, I use a modified version that's shorter, so we do have to scale it up to 100%. Excuse me, out of 100 scale. So I'm going to leave this up here for just a second so that you guys have a little bit of time to fill this out before I move on. Again, I just want to thank Dyknow for letting me present today, and all of you who are in attendance. They had told me at some point we had like 2,000 something people sign up for this, so that's awesome. I know we are in a weird time right now with COVID-19 going around and the school closures and moving to distance education or remote learning, whatever your school district is calling it. I think that instructional technology is in a unique position right now to really explode next year. If campuses and schools don't have instructional technology departments now, after dealing with this and the headache that it is to move from traditional classroom instruction into remote learning, I think positions are going to be created for next year. So I think those of you in attendance now, you're getting information that is going to be vital for how you do your job next year. And then even if your job doesn't exist at your district, it very well might. I'm going to go ahead and move forward now. I hope everyone's had enough time to get that link. I want to go ahead and talk about some of the data that I've got here. So my average trait scores. So the first row of the table is the population average. This population average actually stems from the place that I got my inventory to begin with. Like I said, lots of researchers and organizations use Big 5 inventory, so they make their own. The one I got it from, they have done it with thousands of people, and so they have a pretty robust sample size for their population. And again, these scales are, this scores are out of 100. And so what I've got here is the openness scores: conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. And you can see what everybody's scores are across the board. Then I've got my school district's average, the elementary teacher average, the middle school teacher average, the high school teacher average, and then my scores at the bottom. If you'll notice, my scores for my campus and myself are on average higher than the other scores. That has a little bit to do with the fact that they're scaled. So if you remember, the normal questionnaire is between 50 and 100 questions, and so your responses on a survey that long are going to kind of change how your responses are in a shorter survey. So the scale scores are almost always higher than what you would see if you took a much longer inventory. So that's just something to be aware of. But the openness score, my teachers are pretty open, which is awesome. They're very conscientious, 82 out of 100. Extroversion, 68, pretty extroverted. Agreeable, 87. That's actually not surprising. I'll address it here. It's kind of a known fact when you deal with the Big 5 that anyone in any sort of profession that deals with children or caregiving tends to have higher agreeable scores. So like teachers, caregivers, daycare workers, even nurses, they have higher scores in agreeableness. They just get along with others and they want to build those relationships, which is not surprising. Looking at my individual campus scores, my elementary is a very conscientious campus. They're also a very extroverted campus, and they're a very agreeable campus. So those are kind of their 3 things that I focus on with them, and I'll talk about after we go through the data. My middle school teachers, 74 on openness, 83 conscientiousness. They're a very conscientious campus. They're an extroverted campus. They're also a really neurotic campus, if you see here. But anyone who has dealt with middle school children will know that they make you a little less emotionally stable. That's just kind of a given with middle school kids, right? So my middle school teachers have a slightly higher neuroticism score than the rest of the district does. The high school average, 76 on openness, 78 conscientiousness, extroversions is 63. They're extroverted campus. Well, they're not really that extroverted compared to the other campuses. Agreeableness 86, neuroticism 59. Then you have my scores. Of course, you can take my scores with a grain of salt because I know how the answers work to the survey. So sometimes my scores are a little artificially inflated just because I know what answers I'm supposed to put. But I try to be very honest. My openness is 80, conscientious 86. I'm a very conscientious person in general. I'm a work till it's complete perfectionist type of person. Extroversion, I'm not as extroverted as my district average, which is true. I'm not somebody who has a very large social battery. It drains pretty quickly. So when I'm out on campuses all day, I've got to have some me time at the end to kind of recharge that. I'm also very agreeable, got an 80, and I'm slightly more neurotic than my district average, right? So that's something I need to work on probably. But if you notice again, openness is high for me, conscientious is high for me, and agreeableness is high for me. So I tend to fit really well with being a successful coach because I have those high scores right there in those things. So here's my data. Now, what do I do with it? What did I start doing with the information that I'd gotten? Well, to tailor it to my individual campuses with elementary teachers, I've got 2 campuses of elementary teachers. They're my most conscientious, extroverted, and open campuses. Now, remember, I do have data that I do individually with teachers, and I alter this based on if I have psychological data for my teachers when I go into the classroom. But in average, on average, in general, an elementary teacher is pretty conscientious, extroverted, and open. I focus technology coaching around productivity, interaction, and new experiences. So what I mean by productivity? Well, I focus my coaching with the elementary. We do a lot of G Suite stuff, especially Google Calendar, making sure that they can use those productivity tools to map out their day and make sure that they're on track, in progress for what they want to do. K through 5 actually has iPads, and so we use iPads with every student. We're one-to-one with iPads, and so they're extroverted, and we do a lot of interaction. iPads can very easily become babysitters for children. If teachers aren't careful, they can plop them in front of programs, and then the iPad's doing the interaction for them. But because I have extroverted teachers who want to be active and interactive with their students, I show them ways to use the iPads to be interactive. We do a lot of Seesaw stuff. I'm a Seesaw ambassador, so I do a lot of Seesaw trainings with the teachers, and we do a lot of coaching around using the iPad to create. Apple has the wonderful Everyone Can Create curriculum, and we use that a lot, and making sure that they're using this in an interactive way and that there's interaction in the class. We also focus on new experiences, right? In general, my elementary teachers love to learn new things about technology, and so they're my cutting edge campus. We do a lot of guinea pig stuff with teaching them things. Even like kind of some of the cutting edge stuff like augmented reality, virtual reality in the classroom, using iPads in unique ways. They're always asking me for more stuff and the new stuff, so that's where I focus with elementary teachers. At the middle school, they are my most agreeable campus, but they're also my most neurotic campus, and they're highly extroverted. So being an extroverted campus that's also pretty neurotic is a unique dynamic that I get to deal with them. For those teachers, I focus technology coaching around class harmony, fighting technology fears, and student interactivity. And so the way that works, class harmony, right? Middle school kids can be a handful. They're at the point where they're starting to question, why am I even here? What do I need this for? elementary kids are happy to learn. Middle school kids can start kind of push back against their learning. And so class harmony, before I move forward, so middle school and high school all have Chromebooks. We're one-to-one with Chromebooks at the middle school and high school as well. And so we use Chromebooks and everything of that for those campuses. But the class harmony stuff with Chromebooks is making sure that the teachers can monitor what's going on in the classroom, making sure there's no instances of kids straying from where they need to be. We do a lot of digital citizenship coaching with those teachers, making sure that they recognize how to foster good online behaviors in their children so that we don't have cyberbullying and things like that. I fight a lot of technology fears. This is a neurotic campus, so in general, they're kind of fearful. So I go in and do a lot of fighting technology fears. The statement I probably say to them the most is, you can't break this. If they do break it, I'm impressed. But in general, I tell them they can't break it, play with it, learn. A lot of the conversations around, hey, what's a reason you're not using this currently, and how can I help to kind of get you beyond why you think it wouldn't work, and then how we can get it working in the classroom for you. And then student interactivity, again, because middle schoolers are kind of pushing back against their education. If you give them too much leash, they won't pay any attention. It's using Google Classroom or really any of the G Suite products, so that teachers might be able to, if they're doing a writing assignment inside of a Google Doc, the teacher can provide immediate feedback because that document is shared with them. They can see what the student is writing as they're writing, and then give those feedbacks to them. And so let's move on to my high school campus. The high school teachers, they're highly agreeable, they're open, and they're conscientious. With them, I focus technology coaching around class management, new methods, productivity. At the high school stage, because they all have Chromebooks, if the teacher is not on top of it and they're not getting them engaged, the students will find ways to go to social media or do really anything that's not classroom related. They'll do anything they can not to be learning in high school a lot of the time. And so we use methods inside of the Chromebooks to help monitor what's going on with the students. New methods, the high schoolers, the high school teachers, they like learning about new things. And so again, with instructional technology, there's a lot of cutting edge stuff, and a lot of it is focused on some older kids, right? So as we start moving into this digital space for all of our learning, the teachers like to learn about the different ways that they can use the G Suite products to do a lot of the stuff that the kids were doing by hand before, or things like that. And so as students need to start touring colleges and stuff, right, we can use Google to help do some virtual tours of colleges and they can learn things. Stuff like that. It's pretty neat that I teach the high school teachers how to use. Productivity, again, with the high school, it's a little bit different, right? They have multiple classes that are coming in throughout the day. You've got a small window to teach these kids, and so they need to make sure they're on top of it. They're on top of their game. And so I do a lot of technology coaching with them on how to be more productive, how to make sure that your lessons were set go, 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 how to very quickly use technology to switch between Google Classroom, switch between your lessons to make sure that it's a very smooth process and that everything goes as smoothly as they want it to go. And that's, yeah, so that's from elementary, middle school, high school. That's kind of the process I use. Kind of wrapping this all up in a bow, if you've really just kind of tuned me out until now, here are the conclusions that I'd like to give you about how this works, how this process of me starting this in grad school, taking it into the corporate world, now taking it to the high school, what I found and what I think is the best way to move forward. So part one, if you're going to tailor your coaching to personality, you got to know your own personality levels. The more conscientious, open, and agreeable you seem, more success you're going to have. Based on my research, hundreds and hundreds of people I've surveyed, and taking it from the corporate world now even into the educational space, people I've talked to, if you have those three things, you seem like that, you're going to be more success. Now, I want to highlight the word seem because it's really, there's a lot of research right now saying that observed personality may be more important than what you believe your personality is. So what people believe about you may be more important to your personality than what you believe about yourself. So if people believe you're conscientious, open, or agreeable, even if you don't believe it yourself, it's going to help you be successful in coaching with teachers. You may go into the classroom and say these teachers are the dumbest people I've ever met, but if you can come across as agreeable and willing to make those relationships with them, it'll work. I call it, fake it till you make it, in some of those aspects. So part 2. You have to coach to the personality levels of the teachers you're trying to reach. If you focus your tactics with coaching on their high scoring traits, they're going to be more effective than on their low scoring traits. So what do I mean by that? Well, at the elementary campuses in general, like I said, my teachers there are not very neurotic. They don't have a whole lot of tech fears. And so if I go into the classroom and I start working with a teacher and addressing, hey, technology is not scary, we can get through this, we'll find a ways to make this work for you, I may actually interject some tech fears into them that weren't there to begin with. So I've defeated my purpose by coming in there addressing tech fears when they didn't have any to begin with, because they're not neurotic. They're emotionally stable. They have it down pat when it comes to things like that. On the reverse side of it, my high school teachers, they are not super extroverted. In general, the high school teachers do not want to be up in front of the board, all eyes on me, I'm teaching. They like to do a lot of teaching from their desk. And so when I go into the classroom with them, if my focus is on, hey, here's some technology tips to get you back in front of the classroom and get you, all eyes on you, focused on me, they're going to back away from that because they don't enjoy doing that. So they don't want those things. And so the tactics that are based on their high scoring traits are more effective than those based on their low scoring traits. I don't have it in this presentation, but I do want to, because I know a lot of questions get addressed on how do I know it's working. And one of the things that I know that it's working is that I've been in this for a couple of years now here at Pecos, and I didn't start this immediately. I actually started this about my second year at Pecos, and so I took survey data. I asked my teachers, how well did I do for you? Did I reach what you wanted? Was I a good coach to you? Did you learn what you needed to? Where could I improve? And I have data from that. And then when I started implementing the personality method at the end of that period, I've also asked for the same question. Basically, it's the same survey. How well did I do? And I've seen my scores increase. And so I know that it's positive. I know that it's working. I don't have it in this presentation, but I do have the data backing it up that this is positive. And I would recommend, if you're going to implement this, beforehand, see where you're at, see how well your teachers think you coach to them, and then after you implement this, see how well they think you do. And I would hope that you would see an increase in those scores. That's all I have in terms of the actual presentation. I do want to say thank you to you guys. Again, my name is Caleb Magness. I've got my phone number up on the screen. This goes to my office phone. If you're going to call me, leave a voicemail. I'm in my office maybe once or twice a day. It's much better to reach me an email. I respond to that very quickly, and we'll get with you. Or you can hit me up on Twitter. I like interacting with people on Twitter as well. But again, thank you guys for letting me present to you.
Much, Caleb. That is so interesting to hear the research behind, why of coaching and using that to inform your coaching tactics. We have a few questions from the audience. We have some time to fill as well, so I have a few questions of my own that I'm interested in. But so Sean Coffrin and Jeff had a similar question. Sean says, awesome research. Thank you for sharing. Where can we find more information about the research you conducted and potential next steps to follow?
I will share the presentation with you. Those prior research that I had shown, you can just use Google Scholar. Most of those are available without any sort of subscription to find. I would recommend, if you want to go ahead and move forward with the Big Five, the one I used is pretty good. You have access to that. You have access to that Google Sheet now as a copy. I would say there's a couple of Google Scholar is your best friend for getting any research on this. So anything about personality and job performance, the first few hits in Google Scholar are pretty much what I use.
And is your research published somewhere? Jeff had that question as well.
Yeah, so it's not published anywhere. I've actually, most of mine has always been in poster sessions and doing at conferences. I'm actually looking into doing some HR publications, hopefully in the near future. So fingers crossed that it will be published somewhere at some point. But as of right now, no, there's no publications anywhere.
Okay, that's good to know. Okay, so this is an interesting question. So Tim Yoder shared with us his scores from your Google Sheet and asked how you would interpret them. This might be kind of interesting too for other tech coaches looking to use this, how they might interpret it in real time. So if you pull up the Q&A, actually, you can see his question. Tim Yoder, he says, how would you interpret these results?
All right, so openness, conscious, so 50, 65, 55. Hey, that is a really high agreeable score. That is a 90 out of 100. That's crazy awesome. You must really enjoy building relationships with others would be my first kind of that stands out at me. And that's awesome because remember, agreeableness is one of the best predictors for coaching success. And so you have a very high agreeable score. That's awesome. Conscientiousness is 65. That's great. That's like you said, that's higher than the where the national or international population average is. Openness, you're right there to 50. I mean, midway between 0 and 100. Extroversion, 55. I'm right there with you. I'm not a super extroverted person. If you're a coach who has to go into classrooms a lot, you may want to make sure you find time for yourself to decompress after those interactions because they can wear down that social battery pretty quick. So I would make sure that you're making sure you have time for yourself during the day. And then neuroticism, hey, you're an emotionally stable person. That's awesome. Dealing with a lot of teachers and students throughout the day, it's great to be emotionally stable.
Awesome. Can I ask you, is this kind of a model that teachers could also use to maybe get their students' scores as well for personality and inform their instruction based on that?
Yeah, definitely. I will say that it's a great model for anyone to use. It's really stable in terms of how personality models go. Like I said, with some of the others, I don't hate on any other personality models, but some of them that put you into categories can, like I said, flip you based on one question, depending on if you're on a bubble. I will say that the younger the kids, the more likely your personality changes from day to day. If you're going to start using this with younger kids, you're going to have to modify those questions a little bit, right? So that it makes sense to them and they can answer it honestly for you. But middle school and high schoolers, their personality starts to get pretty stable, high schoolers especially. So you'd probably have more success using it in middle school and high school than you would with elementary kids.
Makes sense. Guy Winters asks, do buildings tend to have district average trait scores or do they tend to regress to the mean?
I would say in general, as the sample sizes get bigger, they do start regressing towards that population average. So my larger campuses, you do see those really high scores and low scores start to cancel each other out that you wouldn't see inside of the smaller campuses. Like I have one of my elementary campuses is just 4th and 5th grade students. And so I have less teachers there and their scores are, they range a lot more on the outliers than my larger campuses because there's just more data to average out.
Makes sense. Okay, so last audience question here. Carla Haven asks, what if someone scores themselves the way they see themselves, not necessarily what others see?
And that's fine. That's what I would recommend when you do this self-evaluation survey, is how you see yourself. The reason I put that second piece is actually when I started this research, because I was asking employees to rate their supervisors, I had to modify my questions to, instead of all of the statements being like, I feel that I do this, it's I feel my supervisor does this. And so those I actually looked at the influence of observed personality, whereas this is all self-reflection. You can change those if you wanted to. If you wanted to see, if you're a coach and you want to see how your teachers view you, go ahead and you can modify all those questions that I've got inside of the Google Sheet. You can modify them to, I feel like my technology coach does this, and then you can see what your observed personality is. You can see how your teachers view your own personality.
That's really interesting. One more question came in from the audience. Lisa Abbott asks, how many campuses do you support and how often do you visit each campus? She says, I have five campuses and sometimes find it hard to balance my time between them.
Yes, so I'm actually one of two people in the instructional technology role. I'm kind of the head of it, and we've this year divided up. Previously, I had all the campuses, but this year we've kind of divided up amongst the two of us. And I mostly focus on elementary now, but I still try to see. I put 1 day a week at least to see each campus. So I've got a 5-day work week and I've got 5 campuses. I can spend an entire day on each campus. It does make for long days because I try to maximize my time there. So we do a lot of signups so that teachers can beforehand know I'm going to be on their campus and then sign up for a 30-minute session with me to discuss whatever we want to discuss during that time.
Cool. So then I had a few questions just that sparked my interest. You mentioned kind of that fear of technology that teachers often have, and you mentioned kind of fear of using the technology because they might break it. Can you talk a bit more about maybe where the fear stems from of integrating technology and instruction and whether that's more internal or external, kind of how that fits in and how to overcome it?
Yeah. I think a lot of it stems from my older teachers are the most fearful of using technology. And a lot of that is they taught most of their career without having access to the amazing, crazy technology pieces we have, and they view it as overwhelming. I also have teachers who are new and still fearful of technology because they didn't have it in their educational experience, and so they don't understand how they would teach with it because they weren't taught it when they were in school. And so it's all really internal to me with those fears that they have. So a lot of it is, like I said, we come at it with the mindset, you can't break this. If you do break this, I'm going to give you a high five because you used it so much, you somehow managed to break it. And what we end up with usually is breaking down those fears by just gradually using it more and more. I do a lot of one-to-one sessions with them after school or on a conference where there's no kids in and they can practice, they can make the silly mistakes doing it. I never want a teacher to have to use technology for the first time in front of their students. That's just a recipe for disaster because technology never works the way we want it to work the first time we use it. And even if we've practiced it a couple of times, it's still going to give us those errors. So I want them to be very comfortable before they start implementing it with their kids.
That's awesome. And Caleb, I'm going to take over. I just got a ping from Tiara that she's having internet issues. So yeah, hopefully she'll be back here soon. But based on just all of us, running into potential issues like our internet going out or working remotely, how are you and your district preparing for just the state of uncertainty that we're currently living in?
Yeah, this is a crazy time for us. We as much as we would like to really lean in heavily to technology, and it's been my push to lean in as heavily as we can, we serve quite a few impoverished students in our area, and so there's a decent portion of our kids that don't have any internet access. And so a lot of the technology, internet-based things that we would want to do with them, that they're just not able to. So we're kind of operating in this hybrid model right now of using Google Classroom and using Zoom video conferences as we need, but also sending out physical packets to teachers. My wife is actually our district's communications officer, and she's been flooded with teachers needing to get information out to students and what's the best way to do it. So our website has gone under almost a redesign to make it easier for parents to find information for the kids. And so like you said, this is kind of a time period that hasn't ever happened before. I know I mentioned it in my presentation that I think instructional technologists are being leaned on very heavily, and districts that don't have this position are going to have it next year just because they're going to understand the value that's brought by having people like us in place.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I appreciate that. And a district head of communication at this point cannot be the easiest of jobs. I can only imagine.
No. Long days for her.
Yeah, just final one for me, based on what you just described. I know it's been a short period of time, but have there been any changes based on things that you've learned about operating in the current state that have been something you've seen right away and you said we need to change this, and something that you guys have moved to quickly, whether it's just communication strategy, how you're using technology, that sort of thing?
Yes, so our communication strategies have had to change a little bit. We've traditionally relied on a lot of paper communications that our students brought home with them at the end of the day, and so now we're having to get that information out to parents without those paper flyers and things like that. So that's been a big technology piece and shift for us, is moving to more robocalls, more Facebook posts, putting on the website, things like that. We've had some discoveries. Luckily, we're actually on spring break when all of this happened, so our kids didn't have to immediately redo their whole educational style. They were able to do spring break. But we discovered that a lot of teachers who we thought were good to go on Google Classroom and things like that weren't where we thought they were. They had just been giving us, oh yeah, I understand how to do it, and then now sending lots of emails. Wait a minute, how did I get my kids signed into Google Classroom and things like that? So it's been an adjustment, and we're seeing where the gaps were, and it's going to be something where next year we're going to have a whole probably new plan in place for if this ever happens again.
Lot of lip service for sure. And you mentioned Facebook, and we're talking social media next. So that's a good segue that you just helped us organically create. So thank you, Caleb.
Awesome. Thank you.
Caleb, can I ask, I'm back, my internet is back.
Oh, good.
Can I ask one additional question? So
go for it.
We at Dyknow have taken, as a team, a few different personality tests. And one thing I learned is that, the state that you're in or the situations that you're in that might change could change your personality and how that shows up. With the test that you use, could an event like this where remote learning might encourage, some stress or some uncertainty among teachers and tech coaches, does that kind of external factor affect how they might show up on that personality score?
It definitely can. I mean, any personality is state dependent. That's just personality in general is state dependent and trait dependent. I would think that most of the categories would probably remain pretty stable. Things like are you open to new experiences might change because you're living in a new experience. If you are fearful about kind of what's the state of the world going on, your emotional stability or neuroticism scores might be higher than would traditionally be because you are a little more fearful. That's just the state of mind you're in. Depending on how you are interacting, if you were someone who actually works really well from home, your conscientiousness scores might be up. But if you're someone who has been struggling to actually get their workload done because you're not in the office and you're not in that headspace, your conscientious scores might be down. So you are 100% correct that all of this could be affected by what's going on with the world right now.
That's interesting. Well, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. This is so different from anything I've learned about before in regard to tech coaching.